Imagine waking up tomorrow and finding out that your electricity bill has doubled overnight. Or picture factories across Europe grinding to a halt as natural gas prices spiral out of control, threatening jobs, businesses, and even the stability of entire economies. For millions across Europe, this isn't just a bad dream. It's a scenario that nearly played out not so long ago. And while things feel stable right now, the forces beneath the surface are shifting in ways that could make the recent crisis look like a warning shot. Right now, Europe is enjoying a rare and much-needed respite. Gas prices have recently dipped to levels we haven't seen since last summer. There's a collective sigh of relief across boardrooms and kitchen tables from Berlin to Barcelona. But here's the twist. Ask any expert, and they'll tell you this calm may be dangerously deceptive. The question on everyone's mind: how long will this window of normalcy last, and what risks are lurking just out of sight? To really grasp what's at stake, let's rewind and break down how Europe's energy backbone became so precarious, and why the story is far from over. A few years ago, Europe's energy mix looked very different. In fact, before 2022, nearly 40% of the continent's natural gas flowed in from Russia. That pipeline, the Nord Stream, was as much a political artery as it was a physical one. It fueled homes, powered factories, and kept Europe's economic engine humming. The relationship wasn't just business. It was geopolitical leverage on a continental scale. But then, in 2022, everything changed. Russia's invasion of Ukraine didn't just redraw maps, it ripped apart the foundation of Europe's gas market. Suddenly, Nord Stream wasn't reliable. European leaders found themselves scrambling as Russian deliveries slowed, then nearly stopped altogether. Gas prices soared to unprecedented heights, setting off alarms in nearly every sector of society. For context, in early February of this year, gas prices were still above $55 per megawatt hour, almost double the historical norm before COVID, and the Ukraine war shook the world. This spike wasn't just a discomfort for consumers. Energy-intensive industries, from chemicals to steelmaking, faced existential threats. Some plants even shut down, unable to absorb the soaring costs. And for everyday people, it meant higher heating bills, rising food prices, and anxiety about what winter would bring. The EU, long proud of its integrated energy market, suddenly felt the consequences of decades of over-reliance on a single supplier. As one well-known Reuters columnist put it at the height of the crisis, Europe should build strategic gas reserves to avoid a repeat of the 2022 shock. The wake-up call couldn't have been louder. Desperate times called for desperate measures. Europe scrambled to replace Russian gas, turning to the world's liquefied natural gas, LNG, markets. Tankers from the United States and Qatar became lifelines. New LNG terminals sprang up at breakneck speed. Policies to reduce gas consumption were rolled out. Energy efficiency became a buzzword, and plans to ramp up renewables like wind and solar took on a new urgency. But pivots like these aren't painless. The surge in global LNG demand sent shockwaves through the market. Poorer countries in Asia, unable to match Europe's deep pockets, found themselves priced out of the market. And within Europe, the need for huge investments in new infrastructure, from regasification terminals to storage capacity, became glaringly obvious. Fast forward to this spring. After a bitterly cold winter, gas prices in Europe have finally eased. The front-month TTF gas price has dropped to between $32 and $37 per megawatt hour as of May, the lowest in almost a year. Some breathed a sigh of relief. But here's a crucial detail. Prices today are still roughly double what they were in the years before COVID. And the reason for the recent dip? Ironically, much of the credit goes not to Europe's own actions, but to reduced gas demand in China. As China's economy slowed and its appetite for LNG waned, the global gas market loosened just enough to send more cargoes Europe's way. Fitch Ratings, a major voice in financial markets, summed it up. Reduced TTF gas prices should support the replenishment of European inventory ahead of next winter. Sounds like good news, right? Maybe. But as we'll see, this argument has more layers than first meets the eye. Let's look at some hard numbers. As winter ended, Europe's gas storage stood at just 34% capacity. To hit their headline goal, 90% full by November 1st, EU countries need to inject 630 terawatt-hours of gas into storage over the spring and summer months. That's a colossal logistical and economic challenge, especially as the rest of the world eyes the same LNG supplies. Shell, one of the biggest players in the business, recently forecast that both global LNG supply and demand are expected to grow at a similar rate in 2025. On the surface, that balance suggests a stable market, but it also sets the stage for price competition if something tips the scales, say a heat wave, a geopolitical shock, or a stronger than expected rebound in Asia. Meanwhile, the emergency price cap the EU put in place to prevent runaway costs has expired. Critics, like the industry association Eurogas, warn that relying on short-term crisis measures can create market distortions, making things worse in the long run. Emergency measures might create market distortions and should be phased out, they argue, urging policymakers to focus on structural solutions rather than quick fixes. There's more. For the first time in years, Europe's natural gas consumption is actually up by 1.8% year-on-year. The reasons range from colder weather to slow uptake of renewables. Germany's ambitious Energiewende, the transition to renewables, has hit roadblocks, with wind output unexpectedly weak in recent months. And while new LNG import terminals offer flexibility, they also entrench Europe's reliance on volatile global markets. The continent's newfound position as an LNG superimporter isn't entirely comforting. LNG comes with its own set of risks. It's more expensive, subject to global price spikes, and heavily influenced by what's happening thousands of miles away. If, for example, a harsh winter sweeps through Asia and China's demand suddenly surges, Europe could find itself outbid and outmaneuvered. It's like playing musical chairs. Sometimes, when the music stops, there aren't enough seats. In a recent comment, Norway's Prime Minister Jonas Gahr Støre delivered a pointed warning. A price cap on gas is not an answer to high gas prices. Renewable power generation is key. His message was simple. Europe can't price cap its way to security. The only real solution is to ramp up sustainable homegrown energy. Yet even as Europe invests in renewables, it faces another dilemma. LNG contracts are typically long-term, sometimes stretching decades. Locking in now could guarantee stable prices, but it also risks overcommitting to fossil fuels, undermining Europe's climate ambitions. On the other hand, staying flexible means living with the constant threat of price spikes if global conditions shift. Here's another source of tension. The United States, Europe's top LNG supplier, has actually seen a decline in LNG exports to Europe in 2024, while demand is projected to increase by about 25 billion cubic meters year over year. That gap will have to be filled, most likely by a mix of sources, each with their own price tags and political strings attached. And what about Russia? The end of Russian gas transit through Ukraine remains a looming variable. If Russian flows resumed on a significant scale, prices could plunge. But few in Brussels or Berlin are willing to bet on that scenario. Politically, it's toxic, and reputational risks are too high. Yet the possibility hangs over the market, complicating every long-term decision. As if all this weren't enough, the elephant in the room is weather. A single harsh winter or an extended summer heat wave could send demand soaring, draining reserves and triggering wild market swings. There is, quite simply, no margin for error. So here's where the real conflict emerges. Europe has weathered a storm, but the foundations of its energy security remain dangerously thin. Should policymakers prioritize locking in long-term LNG contracts, even if it means higher costs and more carbon emissions, or gamble on market flexibility, hoping global conditions remain favorable? Can the continent accelerate its renewables rollout in time to ease the pressure, or will old vulnerabilities resurface at the worst possible moment? And what if, as some experts warn, another unforeseen shock, geopolitical, economic, or environmental, hits before the continent is ready? Europe stands at a crossroads, enjoying a temporary calm but facing a future that's anything but certain. As gas buyers and policymakers look ahead to the coming winter and beyond, the question isn't just how to keep the lights on, it's whether Europe can finally break the cycle of energy crises, or if the next storm is already on the horizon. In just a moment, we'll dig deeper into the tough choices ahead, examining how Europe's quest for energy security is reshaping global markets, the hidden risks policymakers might be overlooking, and the high-stakes strategies that could redefine the continent's economic future. But first, consider this. What happens if the fragile balance tips? Is Europe prepared, or is the real crisis yet to come? As we peel back the layers of Europe's energy situation, that central question hangs in the air. Can the continent truly secure its energy future, or are we merely enjoying a brief calm before the next storm? To answer this, let's project ourselves into the coming months and years. The price relief that European households and industries feel today is, in reality, a fragile peace maintained by forces far beyond Brussels or Berlin. The drop in prices is mostly thanks to weak demand from China, freeing up liquefied natural gas, LNG, that Europe desperately needs. But what happens if China's appetite for gas surges again? Suddenly, those same LNG cargoes could bypass European ports, heading eastward, and the continent could find itself scrambling for energy at any price. Expert voices echo this anxiety. The Agency for the Cooperation of Energy Regulators, known as ACER, warns, to meet summer 2025 needs, LNG imports will need to increase by 20% compared to summer 2024. Europe has to fill its storage to 90% capacity by November, a daunting task when every major economy is eyeing the same LNG shipments. The United States, once a steady LNG supplier, has sent fewer cargoes this year, adding yet another variable to an already volatile equation. Let's imagine three plausible futures, one optimistic, one cautious, and one that keeps you up at night. In the best-case scenario, Europe's aggressive push into renewables, solar, wind, and green hydrogen, starts to pay dividends. Germany's Energiewende shifts more of the power grid away from gas, lowering demand permanently. A mild winter and stable global politics keep prices in check. Investment in storage, strategic reserves, and new pipelines finally catch up to reality, and the continent weathers the next storm with barely a ripple. In this world, Europe not only survives but begins to thrive, using the crisis as a springboard for a true energy transition. But what about the middle path, the more realistic one? Europe limps along, forever dancing on the edge of a knife. Chinese demand returns, global LNG prices rise, and Europe finds itself bidding fiercely against Asia for spot cargoes. Countries reach their storage goals, but only just, and price volatility becomes the new normal. Households pay more, energy-intensive industries struggle to compete, and politicians keep one eye nervously on the weather forecast. In this future, Europe survives, but at a cost: slower economic growth and a lingering sense of vulnerability. And then there's the worst-case scenario, a scenario that's far from impossible. Geopolitical tensions erupt. Russian gas remains off the table, and a global supply shock, perhaps a trade war between the US and China, or political unrest in an LNG exporting country, sends prices rocketing higher. A bitterly cold winter drains storage faster than anyone predicted. Suddenly, rolling blackouts are back, factories idle, and the specter of the 2022 energy crisis returns with a vengeance. But fate isn't written in stone. Europe still has choices to shape its destiny. The first and most powerful tool is diversification. More renewable energy, more suppliers, and smarter storage. There are encouraging signs. Wind and solar are hitting record outputs in some countries. New LNG terminals are opening, and nations like Norway and Algeria are stepping in to fill some of the Russian shortfall. Innovative solutions are springing up everywhere. From heat pump subsidies in France and Germany to district heating networks in Scandinavia, policymakers are finally treating energy security as a matter of national security. Strategic reserves, once an afterthought, are under serious discussion. As Reuters columnist Ron Busso put it, Europe should build strategic gas reserves to avoid a repeat of the 2022 shock. But here's the double-edged sword. Emergency measures, like temporary price caps or subsidies, can keep the lights on in the short term, but may distort the market in the long run. Eurogas cautions, emergency measures might create market distortions and should be phased out. As we weigh these scenarios, let's get personal. What does this all mean for you, the viewer? First, higher gas prices aren't just a headline. They impact your heating bill, the price of food, and even your job if you work in an energy-intensive sector. Understanding the forces shaping those prices can help households and businesses make smarter decisions, investing in energy efficiency, choosing greener appliances, or even advocating for policy change. If you're a homeowner, now is the time to explore solar panels or consider a heat pump upgrade. Every bit of reduced gas usage means fewer shocks if another crisis hits. For investors and business owners, Europe's gas story is a lesson in risk management. Diversification pays off, not just for countries but for portfolios. Companies that adapted quickly in 2022, by locking in energy contracts, switching fuels, or investing in efficiency, weathered the storm better than those who didn't. That lesson applies far beyond energy. In a volatile world, agility and preparation are everything. On a societal level, this crisis has reignited the debate over how much of our critical infrastructure should be left to market forces versus managed with a strategic, long-term perspective. Should Europe impose a permanent price cap on gas? The Norwegian Prime Minister Jonas Gahr Støre argues, A price cap on gas is not an answer to high gas prices. Renewable power generation is key. That's a crucial lesson for everyone. There's no shortcut or silver bullet. Long-term investment in renewables and efficiency is the real solution. And here's a secret fact that often goes unmentioned. Prior to 2022, Russia supplied Europe with nearly 40% of its gas. That leverage shaped not just energy policy, but politics. By ending that dependency, Europe hasn't just protected its gas bills, it's taken a vital step toward real political autonomy. Energy, in the end, is about more than warmth or industry. It's about sovereignty. As we draw to a close, let's return to the question. Can Europe secure its energy future, or is a new crisis waiting just around the corner? The honest answer is, it depends. The next crisis isn't inevitable, but it's always a risk as long as energy remains entangled with geopolitics, global markets, and unpredictable weather. But there's hope on the horizon. Europe is learning. The region has come further in 2 years of crisis than in 20 years of complacency. From new LNG terminals to record renewable investments, from national debates on energy efficiency to EU-level discussions on strategic reserves, the dialogue has changed. The genie is out of the bottle. The ultimate lesson? Resilience isn't built overnight, but through 1,000 smart decisions, by governments, by companies, and by individuals like you. Europe's energy future is unwritten. You can play a part in shaping it, from the choices you make at home to the policies you support. So, as you switch off the lights tonight or turn down the thermostat, remember, you're part of a continent-wide story of transformation. Will Europe emerge stronger from the shocks of recent years? The answer, in part, lies in all our hands. If you found this deep dive valuable, share it with friends and family who want to understand the hidden forces behind those monthly energy bills. Subscribe for more stories that explain the world's biggest challenges and opportunities. Leave a comment. What's the most surprising thing you learned about Europe's gas story, and how are you preparing for an uncertain